reemergence of grief for my mother. I will never wear purple nail polish, gaudy on fingertips, chipped and fading, in memoriam to losing you. I will not leave dirty dishes in the sink for more than 24 hours, in memoriam to losing you. I will not imagine cutting the flesh of my knees and thighs and stomach, in memoriam to losing you. I will not stretch my arms or beat my memory or smack the backs of my eyes until overwhelming tears fall, in memoriam to losing you. I will not block the squirrels from ransacking the bird feeders, but add abundant seed for the taking by rabbits and other landlocked beasts, in memoriam to losing you. I will dance a little every time I feel good, in celebration of having you. I will share food and stories and humor in celebration of having you. I will match my shoes to my socks, to my belt, to my dress, to my earrings, to my eyes, and feel delightful in celebration of you.
Welcome to another poet in Montana. Today's guest is Mara Panich. And Mara's just shared a poem from her first collection of poems, Blood is Not the Water. Beautiful collection of poems and illustrated by Mara Panich. Yes, welcome, Mara.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're here.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, I in the brief bio or whatever, it says that you grew up in Indiana. Mm-hmm. And when did you get to Montana?
In 2002, so I just hit 20 years.
Wow.
I think that makes me official.
You're an elder at this point.
Right.
Well, that's great. And you're also the proprietor and owner of Fact and Fiction.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where you were a bookseller for quite a long time.
Yeah, for a long time, bookseller and manager, and then bought it just a couple years ago now.
Yeah, and I was not aware of the fact that you were a poet for quite a few years, I guess. I mean, I knew you were a great bookseller, and then when I found that out through a mutual poet friend of ours, Mr. Lundy, and started reading your poems, I was quite delighted. And I also had the opportunity to become an editor of this series of poetry for Foothills Publishing, and your manuscript was an obvious choice.
So, I appreciate it greatly.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book.
Yeah, I didn't write much for a long time. I was still writing, but wasn't really focusing on it. So the fact that you didn't know was pretty similar with a lot of other people because I wasn't really doing much with it.
Right.
So once I picked it back up again, I kind of determined myself to be serious about it and start sharing and trying to get more published, and that's about the time that it all.
Right. Well, the timing was good then.
Yeah.
And you went to college at Purdue, is that right? And you studied literature?
I had a double major in literature and creative writing.
Yeah.
Focused on poetry, and then minors in religious studies and sociology.
All right.
All very money-making endeavors.
Yeah, well, typical. Then you're a poet, probably, right? I mean, I understand. My first major was psychology, and then I switched to drama, and then it was like, these are all winners, right? For getting a job in Montana.
Psychology was my first too.
Oh, there you go.
Before I switched.
Well, it kind of makes sense in a way. All of that does. I thought, as odd as it was, for other people that were interested in making money.
Right.
So anyway, where did you get your proclivity or your interest or your start in poetry, do you think?
I'm not sure. My mom was always kind of a creative person. She wasn't, I wouldn't call her like super artistic, but everything she did with a little bit of flair, and she always wrote little things for newsletters for anything she was involved in and things like that, and she always really pushed writing. So that was part of it. And then when I got into high school, I was kind of your typical angsty teenager, and my best friend, who is still one of my best friends, and I both wrote poetry and published a zine and did all that. And I had never considered it as something you could really do until I was in college.
Right.
And I switched over and actually got a degree in it as something that I was just starting out as taking the classes because I wanted to keep writing.
Right. And did you, was that a part of why you came to Montana, was to continue that education, or?
I came here as a English lit student for grad school for my master's.
Oh, okay.
I came from an environment and family that was much more career oriented, and I was not encouraged to follow the arts as a career. I was encouraged to do it,
Right.
and always explore that, but as a career,
Right.
it was very much so pushed. Oh, you'll have better luck with a
It's a good,
English
it's
major.
a good hobby.
Yes, exactly.
It's something you have for
Exactly.
yourself. You know, It's
Yeah.
like a diary, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and although I'll say as we've aged and everything, I believe my dad has come around a lot more to encouraging the creative pursuits and understanding it more.
Cool.
So, yeah.
So that was a beautiful poem for your mother that you opened with.
Thank you.
And I noticed, because I had a chance to see this book as a manuscript and then to look through the poems, and you write in a whole variety of different sort of poetic styles, I'd say. That last one being kind of the old chant sort of version of repetition. What are you up to now? Do you want to share something that you're worked on here more recently? And
I have not typed up a lot of what I've worked on.
yeah.
So these are a little bit older, but
Well, whatever you want to share with us.
I've done a lot of more prose poetry. The most recent thing I wrote was actually a short story.
Oh yeah.
Which I think is the first short story I've finished since elementary school.
Like a short or a little longer? I mean,
It's only
like,
handwritten, so.
yeah, okay.
But I would say a short. It's probably only a couple pages
Right.
typed out. But and then I've got several little things, but I really need to sit down and start, because when I consider poems complete is after I've typed them up. That's when I do a lot of the editing process.
Oh yeah,
So,
sure, yeah. Well, read us one of the ones that you've got typed up.
One of the ones I got typed up.
Sure.
Okay. We won't dig through the journal. I'll try to avoid mom grief, because that tends to be a very prominent topic, but
Well, sometimes things are hard to avoid.
it's true. It's true.
The poets.
Yeah. So I'll read this one, Crayfish Boil. I am a bug under a rock next to the creek of my youthfulness, wild and hidden in the murky shallows, digging for escape. Mud bottom gathering, fascination with the ecology of clicking insect hearts next to the boiling pot we pilfer community. I listened to your words in a language I knew but did not understand, each word indistinct from the next in a soft chattering of indifference. The unfathomable bank holds erosion at bay as we descend into a massive beige beginning. If I told you of my longing for experience, would you take me on a journey to explore everything that came before us? These crustaceous bugs deceive our lanky fingers with lemony acid burns and temptation to appropriate to the point of assimilation.
Nice. Yeah. I know that the poems in Blood Is Not the Water are, I mean, overall they have a real personal feel to them, but that, like I say, there's this variety, and like some of them are like lyrics, and some of them are like narratives, and some of them are like language poems. It's just like that play and ricochet of language. Do you want to read us one that's kind of language playful, just for the fun of it?
Sure. There's
lots of them in there.
yeah. Maybe I'll do two, because the one I'm thinking of is very short.
Oh yeah.
The one that's the most language play.
Mm-hmm.
It's titled Couplet. A piece of a pear is not half of a whole.
A short couplet.
That's a short. It's a short couplet, a short poem, a very. But I think it's succinct.
Yeah, it totally is.
And let's see. Some of the ones that are more playing with language are a little harder to read aloud, because I've questioned how to read them.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. I know what you mean.
You know, do you read the parentheticals? Do you pause? That can be a difficulty. Even though most of my poetry, I feel sounds better out loud.
Mm-hmm. Well, and some of it, because of the way it's presented, formally on the page is unappreciated to just hear out loud, the structure on the page. But you know, whatever you language play there, you can throw at us. We'd love to hear.
Morning Ceremony is one that I think plays, and it has a lot of parentheticals in it.
You're aside.
On gray mornings, the sun struggles to break the sky. Development is delayed. Setting a balance of white on white encourages tenacity in a projected image. Desire closing, shutters slowly, with less speed and more consideration. Body clicks and shifts towards gentle lighting, overexposed. Reaching for soft illumination like leaves edging, stop motion to photosynthesis. A digitized image in my memory. You are a photo that cannot be torn or cut or crumbled. Pixelized ether cannot be tucked into a box to be remembered fondly when found in warmer weather patterns. Deletion after desertion, a quick selection, wiped clean, suffer the deprivation of ritual, burning, tearing, tossing away, the delirious detritus of a snapshot.
Yeah, a lot of language going on there. What was the title again?
Morning Ceremony.
Morning. And the spelling on morning is?
Mourning as in grief, yes.
Right.
Yeah. This was written in response to a breakup, but remembering the time when you could actually take all the photos and the things and put them in a box or do whatever you will with them, and how now everything is a
digitized
digital thing that, yeah, you can delete it, but it just doesn't have the same effect on the soul as boxing up or burning or crumpling and throwing away. Just pressing a button is kind of, it's like you can't slam down a cell phone when you're angry.
Yeah,
like you do an old phone.
Yeah, it's expensive.
It's expensive. You can.
I just got news that the device part was paid for now.
Oh.
So I hope I don't.
Now
do
it's going to break.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, are you thinking about something now in particular, or in terms of your poetic endeavors? Have you got some kind of a thing going on?
I don't have anything specific going on. I've been writing. I think I'm just more in a gathering and writing period. After having bought the store, I added a lot to my work life, so
Yeah.
finding the time just to write is most important. And then as I get more into that, I'm trying to figure out when I'm going to have the time to start submitting again and gathering more for publication and
Right.
things like that, because that's almost a full-time job in and of itself.
Oh yeah, for sure. And owning a business is a full-time job in and of itself.
Plus. Full-time job plus, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So who are some of your favorite poets? Who do you read a lot of? I know you read a tremendous amount. But,
I do.
For fun, you know.
Natalie Diaz is a constant favorite. Thinking of others here.
She is a great poet.
She's great. I love her post-colonial love poems is
Right.
immaculate. Most recently, the book I've been really into is Caitlin Scarano, who is, I believe she lives in Washington now,
Okay.
but she has a newish book out called The Necessity of Wildfire, which floored me.
Yeah. Okay.
It
A book of
was
poetry.
A book of poetry, yeah.
Cool.
She's had several books out, but this one just really captured me.
So it's on the shelf probably downtown somewhere.
It's on the shelf now.
If someone wanted to pick it up. I started reading a book of essays. I guess that's what you'd call it. It's a book that was written by Evan Boland,
Oh, yeah.
and it's called what's it called? A tale of two maps, or a journey with two maps, or something like that. But it's about being a woman poet, or becoming a poet in living in Ireland, you know, which was more of a challenge maybe than being in America. I don't know, but at the time, she's a little older than we are. Not too much. She's still around, right? Yeah, I think she's still kicking.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she writes about all the women that she discovered along the way. She had kind of she went to college. She got she studied poetry. She was all focused. She was like a Yeats scholar. She was totally into the whole poetry world, and then she decided to have children. And so boom, all of a sudden there was this kind of a domesticity that entered her life for quite a while, and so I think she kind of measures her awareness by these two halves of her life, kind of what that experience, what that was, and then trying to figure out how to write about it, because there was no tradition for it in Ireland. Like a domestic woman poet. Well, there was a tradition, but it was...
It's just not available to see. I'm sure there are plenty of people doing it.
Yeah, and it was just sort of, like the typical expectation of the patriarchy for that type of poetry.
Yeah, and so often it's taken as not serious.
Yeah,
like the topics of domesticity, or even just women's topics in general, much like women's art, or what would be traditionally deemed women's topics, or women's art, I should say.
Right.
But often, embroidery isn't viewed as a serious art when it is intensely so.
Yeah, exactly. All these art forms that women did do that were kind of poo-pooed simply because it was domestic.
Right.
Yeah. And well, and your book too is full of a lot of that pushback, I think, against just that, as the whole world is. We went through the Me Too movement right at the time of the pandemic, or just before, I guess. But do you want to read us something like that?
Sure.
From Blood is Not the Water, a little pushback against Fight the Power.
Always. I can read I Was Born,
Yeah.
which is another kind of repetition poem, and
kicks off the book.
kicks off the book. It was written in response to, I had an essay in We Leave the Flowers as They Are, which is put together by Richard Fifield,
Right.
and was all women writers writing personal essays. And after reading the other women's stories, this was a response poem to all of their stories of their experiences. I was born a fat girl in a too tight dress, struggling to feel beautiful, straining to fit, to cut the sleeves off thrift store frocks, to wrap vintage belts around muumuus, to reinvent style every morning of my life, to swaddle myself in cotton and linen and shimmering fabrics, defense against weakness in the face of degradation. I was born a giant in a baby's head, thinking the world was a kind and cruel duality, knowing food and drink were necessary, but also moral tests of my will to be one of many, to be smart but quiet because loud is an offense to the ears of men. I was born to see the world through rose-colored glasses that slid down my acne-laden nose, assuming kindness and being let down again and again by braggarts and bullies and the dichotomy of virgin or whore. I was born to press a brush, a pen, a pencil to paper, to create a vision of what may or may not have affected me. And they ask, but what is it supposed to be? Why is it green? It didn't actually look like that. I was born to tell stories, to sell stories, to hear stories, to curate words on a page, to memorialize my worth in this society. I was born to tell you that it is going to be okay. I was born to listen to the cries of companions as they scurried and languored in self-doubt, to hold your hand, to touch your back, to gaze with empathy as you weep with joy or anger or hurt or pleasure. I was born to tell you that everything is going to be all right, that the world is falling apart, but I know we are still standing, declaring this war moot, claiming the rolling hills of our bodies to be our lands, and they will not be torn apart again.
All right. Yeah. That's a great poem.
Thank you.
Rallying cry.
Yeah, it's kind of an anthem type.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost hear the music with the drums in the background.
Nice.
What was it right early on? There's a what the hell is it? It's I was born a giant in a baby's head. I love
Yes.
that line. A giant in a baby's head. For some reason, that one just like stuck in me like a spear.
Nice.
Yeah.
I was a giant baby.
Yeah, me too. And I had to just, I finally had to renew my driver's license, and they said, well, do you want your real ID now? And I thought, oh, God almighty, I guess we've been digging you for this real ID for the last 10 years.
Right.
So I went down there, and I of course, I didn't have a real birth certificate, and which pissed me off. I had to go back to the courthouse and get a birth certificate.
Yeah.
But anyway, I saw the birth certificate, and yeah, I was like almost 10 pounds. That's a big baby.
That's all of us were big babies. I was a month and 3 weeks early.
Oh,
I was
okay.
a preemie in the NICU,
Yeah.
and I weighed almost 8 pounds. I was double the size of most of the other babies. They had to bring in a special incubator for me because I was giant. It's big babies. Yeah. But
Well,
yeah.
is there anything else you want to, did you have in your mind when you were coming here that you wanted to talk about or you wanted to read necessarily?
Not necessarily. I mean, I thought you'd have more questions for me.
Well, let me see. I can sure as hell, come up with a few, I'm sure. What the hell would it be? This may be an opportune time for us to actually cut or edit because I'm an idiot as I sit here with egg on my face.
That's up to you.
Yeah. Well, for some reason I'm thinking more about. I guess I'm just thinking more about poems at the moment than I was, like anything in terms of your personal journey here or anything like that. This last section of the book, this safe space section is, I like the way the book starts out with that anthem, and that rallying cry, and it is full of repetition and this taking on the world, and this is who we are. And I say we because I get that feeling from the poem. And then it goes into a lot of like language play, language poetry stuff, I think. Comes back in more of a narrative in that third section, and a lot of stuff to deal with your mother. Let me see. And so it's funny too, because as I'm reading through it, it's like some of these titles are, we words, right? Some of these titles are like titles I've used too, right?
Oh,
like,
sure.
Or word play, the kind of stuff that we do. Voyeur. Do you want to read Voyeur?
Sure. I think kind of to what you were saying about the format of the book and where it goes, something a lot of people have said, you write about it, it's really varied. You go from grief to body to sex to love to, this and that.
Right.
And I think it's all intertwined. I know a lot of people separate things out, but as I was putting this together,
well, everything is, right?
Yeah. And everything, like the grief for my mom and the issues I was going through. Timing of the writing of these poems was right for that.
Right.
But that all directly relates to the feelings of the body, especially for women, that there's kind of an inherited, I don't want to overuse the word trauma, but wealth and trauma.
Yeah.
From whoever your mother or mother figure was.
The trauma of subjugation and objectification.
Exactly. And that all bundles together in the way one, as an adult, grieves loss.
Sure.
Or grieves the loss of a mom or an important person. Also, had been going through a divorce at the time, which,
Yeah.
all of those things come together
Right. And somehow, even though, like you say, you aren't consciously trying to separate things out, somehow though, the mind, your mind, or whoever is making something like this, tries to create some kind of form out of it, or some kind of a
here's something understandable, because if you saw what was actually in my head, it would be chaos. And I think that's part of why people write or make art, is to maybe try to make it into that form, take the chaos and get it into the best organization.
And poetry is a good spot for it, because we're language oriented and our brains are, and where else are you going to have the room, the elbow room, to try to do something with that chaos, other than in a poetry form?
Yeah, poetry works. Yeah, because it doesn't have to be narrative. It doesn't have to be, well, not that anything has to be. Here I go, rambling on into things,
like you're also a painter. Is there anything else that you do to sort of release your artistic?
Mostly just painting and writing. I do other things, but it's not so much it's more as, I love to cook and things like that, but that's more of a calming
Right. Right.
act than.
Yeah. And music. I always kind of wish that I would have had the discipline or whatever to teach myself to play something when I was younger, because it just got worse and worse the older I got.
Same.
It's like
and-
learning another language, right?
Right, and I
Yeah.
am no musician. I admire music and I love listening, but I was a decent technical trumpet player in high school, but never considered myself a musician. That never sparked for me.
Right.
And I think there's a certain thing that musicians have where they express in music. I can hear it and I can feel it from other people, but I've never been able to bring that part out of myself.
Right. Yeah, probably most people that played music in school had a similar sort of experience.
Yeah.
How about?
Boyer, got it.
Cool.
Laughter echoes pornographic as I sit, attempting to ignore intimate joy. Feet are ice, jutting from pillars. Hold me up, yet so easily melted away. Wine has become medicine for the blood and the body of self. Less mental energy expelled to sleep, to imagine. Comforts of friendly companionship. Reach for that conversation where you spoke of your mother's confusion by a transgendered priest. Your laugh, apologetic, a mixing of embarrassment, of mirth. There are connections made, circuits crossed. Sometimes we equate joy with love, and your abandonment broke a streak of affection so shallow that only mud and slush remain. We are beginning to accept these rejections, this redaction of weather patterns and strange northwesterly winds that have no comparisons. Follow the path of least resistance, and persistence becomes necessary. How slick does it need to be to make you stay with what you know? To comfort yourself in the familiarity of home front, blankets and propane dreams. The birth of daily dirges explode in an accordion grief. The soundtrack of our longing disappoints pop singers, but we dance, ecstatic and whirling, frozen flakes dismissing the hope of distraction. We can exist in a moment, watching jovial videos of distantly dying wildlife, caught, thinking no one was watching, but your eyes, your ears, your body are everywhere observing my mysterious longing to calculate how much you miss me.
All right. Yeah, I got distracted. This is the other thing that we do, right? Whether we're reading or listening, we get distracted on something, and then it's like you're trying to keep up and trying to process something else at the same time in your head. So I should listen to it about 5 more times again, probably. But I was kind of got distracted on the pronoun stuff. You know, I mean, it's like do you use the you, the second person, a lot? Do you in your poems? Is that something that you do a lot, or is it because I mean in this particular poem it felt like you had a definite audience that you are directing the poem at the you,
Yeah.
and then the we and then the my or the I,
Right.
but sometimes I mean you know what I'm talking about?
Like the general you.
Yeah. Do you? I mean it's like it's ambiguous. I guess
yeah.
it can be.
I think I do use that.
Yeah. Hugo
yeah.
did that a lot, I guess. Maybe that's kind of where I first experienced it, with like reading that in his stuff. You know?
Yeah. I think I almost always, like when I'm writing something that has a you, it probably has a specific person, at least to start. But that you is useful in knowing that, like, you can talk to the generalized, like,
Yeah,
and be like, you need to know this, or you need to, or you're feeling this.
Yeah, and you can kind of become everything. It's kind of a way of removing yourself from the poem or putting yourself totally into it, and the audience is trying to make, what the hell are they doing here? What's going on? You know, and maybe that's just a goofy thing, that another one of those things that poets like to mess with their audience. I don't know, but I like that technique of playing with the pronouns. Something else I had in my feeble mind when I was heading down. Oh, I guess it was in reading the book of essays I was talking about earlier, Evan Boland's study. She said one of the things that she found missing was in like as models prior to, you know, women writing in Ireland anyway, was this sort of owning the I and having a personal ground to stand on and having authority with which to speak, you know, with the I. Because I know, like, a lot of some of the language poets and whatnot totally tried to abandon the I, the capital I, and get away from, you know, the ego or whatever.
Right.
And not that we ever really can, but anyway, she was sort of embracing that when she came back into creating this new sort of poetry that women could write, or that she wrote.
I think that's a great observation, because, I was definitely had instructors and workshoppers say I overuse the I, or that the I is, you're too present in the poem. And I want to ask, why the hell shouldn't I be present in the poem? I'm writing the poem.
Right.
I recognize that people want to be universal, but like.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and if you are writing poetry that is really trying to express something, or trying to throw off the chains of the past and be an anthem or whatever, you need the I.
Yeah.
And you need the we.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
I mean, it's a rallying kind of a cry, you know. Yeah. So to be denied that, I always hated that about that kind of stuff too. But you weren't supposed to say anything. So
right.
Okay, I'll say
But
that.
I mean,
listen to this asshole.
I mean, you can also, as a writing exercise, it's fun to play around with those things.
Yeah,
You know, write it, take out the I.
Right.
Try to work it in different ways and see how it feels.
Yeah.
And that can be amazing, but I don't see any reason to be anti.
No.
Your own presence
in
your work.
I hate to keep. I mean, obviously, what stuck in my head is just reading this
right.
book of essays I was reading. But one of the things that she talked about, because of her education, was that modernism, right, came on the scene and said, no more of the old style, of the forms, of the rhymes, of all that kind of stuff. We're going to break free. We're going to open things up and let poets be what they want to be, and then sort of the backlash against anybody that would do anything back there was, that's, you know, why that? Why my way or the highway at any time? Why not just let it be what it may be? That's kind of and that's what she was making an argument for, was why not embrace both?
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes you can get some really interesting stuff when somebody tries to go back to form and presses that.
And a lot of people are doing that, I think, more now, and maybe as a sort of backlash to modernism at this point. You know, form has been back in the world more prominently.
Yeah,
over the last few years.
Yeah.
Well, who else? Ada Limon?
Ada Limon, love Ada Limon.
She's our current Poet Laureate.
Yes. She's fantastic. I was really happy to see her. Of course, Joy Harjo, the former Poet Laureate, and Tracy Smith, the former before that. All of them are wonderful poets. It's kind of amazing. We've had 3 women and all of very differing backgrounds in the last few years.
trying to make up for lost time, maybe.
It needs to happen.
Well, I mean, on one level, but on the other level is they're just damn good poets, too.
Indeed.
And they deserve...
Outside of anything else.
Whatever they're doing. You know?
I'm trying to come up with someone to slide in a male poet for you.
Yeah, poor bastards there.
Hanif Aboudarik. Hanif is wonderful.
Oh, that's how you say his name.
Yeah.
Because I just finished that his well, I don't know how new it is, but the only book of his that I've read, and I just
the poetry.
Yeah, the poetry
for
book.
Your Disaster, I think it's called, something like that.
It's a yellow yellow cover. It's got an image of a young woman.
I think it's called A Fortune for Your Disaster.
Okay.
Yeah.
God, it's a great book of poetry.
Kaveh Akbar is also someone who has like 2 books that also have been fantastic. Calling a Wolf and Pilgrim Bell is his most recent.
Okay.
That's one where he now teaches at my alma mater at Purdue, and I wish I could go back and take a class from him.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the other problem with being a business owner, right?
Yeah.
It's worse than having a pet.
Right. Yeah.
Well, how about another one?
Okay.
How about, something that you brought with you, or even working on the last section, which, is not necessarily a safe space poem, which is not necessarily too long to read, I don't think. It's very short line.
It's longish, but it's not too long.
Many sections, but it's a good one to hear out loud, too.
Space. Do this one more time. Do I have any, what kind of stickers am I showing the world? And actually, I realize that, well, actually, no, this one should be okay. I realized as I was reading, I was born, that this is the proof copy.
Oh.
And there's a lot of
there you go.
odd line breaks that didn't get fixed.
Yeah, I know. There you go. Yeah.
Actually, this one's the same, but that's all right. So this is a safe space. It's a numbered poem. 1. If you toss a woman from a moving car, a cigarette discarded with a violent flick of pointer finger and thumb, there are technicalities. 2. Consider adrenaline confuses as you jump off a bypass in the dark. The act of saving yourself is the very act through which you disappear. 3. I will tell you what you want to know, but refuse to identify solid. Water, ice, steam, rising from the coffee mug you despise, I secretly love. You may unwrap me, I present unabashedly female, love the areas where you are curved and also where he is linear. 4. I am incognito in my nakedness, disappearing for lack of lipstick and colored breast. Birds, for want of a better metaphor, fluff their feathers at the sight of a favorable mate. Monsters, on the other hand, demonstrate in shady areas. Interface between sacred and profane, our unconscious desire. Pardon me. 5. If you came to a holiday gathering, would you bring a gun? Does yearning inspire 2 shots, no warning? 6. What assumptions are made up from my low-slung dresses, your pants and boots? 7. I like the way I look, and I like the way I feel, and I like the way they look at me, and I like the way they smile, and I like the touch of your fingertips saying sexy things, and I like the way I turn my head when beauty passes by, and I like the falling snow in darkness, and I like my painted nails, and I like the praise from a stranger unaware, and I like to get emotional, excited, or dismayed, and I like the tender rolls of skin that fold beneath my clothes, and I like you knowing the place to touch, and I like to laugh and pull away, and I like to be with you, and I like to say that I can't stay, and I like to be selfish, and I like also aim to please, and I like to hold a warm cup, and I like to stay unafraid. 8. Thousands of minuscule needles perform a masochistic acupuncture treatment, reddening my chest and forearm, but they insist it is a sensitivity, not an allergy. 9. What would I have done to survive Western expansion, to outlast manifest destiny? A bedraggled prostitute, adorned, adored, cold and solid, with an excellent bedside manner, customer service guaranteed, hosiery and socks and sleeves and skirts and coverings and boots and woolens and corsets, too constricting to stay on for long. 10. I will be meat for your eating. Drag the steak knife against the grain. 11. She disappeared uncharacteristically. They are looking through heaps of garbage for her name, her body, her DNA, her blood quantum, sifting the soup of our discarded lives for a clue, a single snowflake melted before accumulation. 12. At 17, he drowned in his own bathwater while everyone wailed. I imagined a sigh of relief as his muscles relaxed and gave way to warm waters. 13. Beware the bringing, the drawing of worms after a storm, dry drowning in the light of morning. 14. Fetish objects float through our unconscious memories. Unlace boots efficiently, one-handed unbuttoning, bra straps, wool socks, combs and brushes, soft sweat and odor of bodies, naturally groomed, subtle imperfections. I want to make you into art, share my pleasure wantonly. 15. Does the way I present my breast, my curve, my soft mounds of fat and skin and muscle and foam make me less dominant, or does it give me more sense of control, subterfuge, a silent smile long before reaching for pepper spray? 16. She sits on her mystery. Worrying is an antiquated approach, exceptionally cleared because she knew him. She was aware of his person, he, not hers. Object, objection, herself, memento mori, vanity of earthly life, more concerned with numbers than people, with numbers than people. 17. My closet is still full after the purge. Everything is coming out. 18. Breathe the steam of my nudity, the odor of the beast bear rising after a lingering hibernation. 19. Stroke or household accident, lying on the bathroom floor for days, staring at the urine drips, the collection of hairs and dust and dirt below the rim. Should I retile with a contingency plan for staring 4 days alone and not dying? 20. A splotch of bright color in a gray alley, alone, icy, and curled in a doorway. 21. I built an altar in a lonely nook, filled it with the fates of women lost, stolen from newspapers and social media shares, torn from family albums. She's older now. She's 15. She knows him, trusts him. She's gone hard to frost under a snow-laden apple tree with anyone else but me, with anyone else but me, with anyone else but me. 22. This page is marked, your thumb where you touched my cheek, a smudge of my flesh tone cream, a mask to cover dark spots and inflammations and selfhood. Wipe at me with your confusion, undress me until I am honest before you. Eyebrow pencil, mascara, cover cream, lipstick, smear, nail polish, the hair in between. 23. You can't blame the bartender's hands for the additives included after he walks away. You can't blame the bar for what happens outside the bar. You can't blame him for trying to bed us both. You can't blame a stranger for being strange. You can't blame him for wanting. You can't blame him for looking. You can't blame him for trying. You can't blame him. You can't blame. You can't. You can. You.
All right. That's nice. That's a good illustration of what you were talking about earlier, I guess, in terms of trying to thread these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an amalgamation of a lot of different things that
Yeah.
relate, but the numbered parts kind of help.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And safe space. A title. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There aren't many true safe spaces. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're probably getting close, I suppose, to the end of our time.
Sure.
Is there anything else that you wanted to share or say or think about the whole process of scribbling poems or anything else? Is there one more you want to read?
I think I don't know that there's anything else I want to read. I just think we all should keep scribbling.
Yeah, that's good.
It's more important than
Good
ever.
idea. Yeah, totally.
They really are scribbles.
Well, that's where they start.
Yeah.
It was funny. I found one. Well, I didn't find it. Somebody else found it. I gave a bunch of newspapers to my son and for Firestarter, because I used to get the paper all the time. I don't now, but anyway. So Sam was, making a fire. Whatever. She picked up this paper, and it's like somebody had scribbled a poem with these little slash line links and stuff up in it, and it was like. So she gave it to me, and I'm like, oh. Well, thanks, because I think there is something there.
Right?
But I don't know, lost it or forgot about it or
Fell in a
scribbles.
pile of recycling, and yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing this. I know you're extremely busy. Keep on scribbling. There's another book out there waiting to happen, I'm sure.
I'm hoping so.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Mara Panich, pardon me. Mara Panich is a poet in Missoula, Montana. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you again next time on Poets in Montana.
Got a lifetime filled